go. So, hi everyone. It's Friday Spry Play number 6. We're going to have a look at the solid relimiter. So in this particular example, I'm going to run you through how to use the solid relimiter, which is going to cut the solids to a surface. You can use grids, triangulations. It's a little quicker if you use a triangulation because we triangulate the grid before we do the relimiting. I'm just in the demo model. I've clearly just created a little bit of a strange dump solid where I've raised a whole section of the dump by a few meters so I can show you how we can recut the surface. I'll isolate it down. This is in the demo model. This is the alpha outer pit. And if we have a look at one particular RL inside of that, because that'll make clear what we actually end up doing here, I'll just isolate it down to the 140 bench. So there we go. You can see some of it sits above and some of it sits below this surface. So the relimiter will cut the solids to this surface. It will also produce a new volume, but it will also produce the percentage removed and percentage remaining as well. So new solid, new volume, but also percentages. So if you are happy with the solid and happy with the result, but you want to use the percentage instead of the volume, then we can use the percentage instead. So I'll show you how to do both of those methods.
How many keys do you want?
Just in case the people that have walked into the room are unclear, I'm live doing video. So
Oh, you're doing video. I thought
I'm
you were-
doing video and I'm live. Off you go. So let's add a folder in here for relimited. So we're in the dump table. So I'm going to add a folder called relimited. The key things that you're going to need to add, you probably want to add all 4 of the values. You don't have to, I mean, there's going to be a percentage removed and a percentage remaining. You technically don't really need both, but it can be handy to have both. So I'm going to leave the percentage removed, percentage remaining. We're going to put the solid, this is where we're going to put the new solid field. And then I'm also going to put a final, we're going to call this like scheduling volume field. And this is because anytime you add the concept of the relimiter to an existing model, you're going to be trying to intercept, like previously the volume that was used for the dump was either going to be possibly this deswelled volume up here or this bank or more like loose volume that was imported from elsewhere. So if you're going to use the volume from the relimiter, then the scheduling volume is just going to be the relimited volume. But you may want to use the percentage removed and then multiply it by whichever value you were using before. So this is the reason why you sort of want to create a separate scheduling volume so that you can, easily make an adjustment to how you want to use, like what kind of volume you want to use without touching like your imported values or without touching any of these other ones. So the aggregation for these is going to be summed. The volume, the weight averages for these are going to be based on the imported volume. These are also percentages. This is just tidy, neat stuff. You don't have to do this, but it just makes it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So that's the field set up to start working with the relimiter. So I'm just going to hit apply, close. The next part of the process is to actually run the relimiter. So I'm going to go to the utilities and then we go to relimit solids. And I've run this through once before, so there's some automatic stuff that's been mapped here. But I'm going to use this what's called surface 4, just because it's a fake surface I've just been playing around with. But you're going to use your, your LiDAR or your flyover surface. And then with the range for the moment, because this only if I'm going to limit it to the range of things that affects. This takes about 2 minutes to run on the full data set, and it's a little bit quicker just on the alpha outer pit, which is what I'm trying to show you how it works. I would recommend that for this, the way that I like to use this tool is I untick export only modified solids. I want to actually send, if a solid doesn't get relimited, I want to pull it down through anyway. I want to kind of copy it. I'll explain the reason for that in the next couple of minutes. And then with the clamps as well, your defaults for these are 5% and 95%. I would also recommend for this particular job is that you make them quite small. This just means that if you hit 1% of a solid, you're still going to cut it, whereas the default, it doesn't cut anything less than 5% or anything more than 95%. So the volume field, you tick on the solid that you actually want to scan. In our case, it's not the new solid field, it's the old solid field. So we set the volume, the percentage remaining, the percentage removed, and the solid. Pause the video, copy the settings if you need to, and then also finally, sorry, just to be clear, in the dump version, what we want to do is we want to remove solids. We want to delete the solids that come out below the surface. Okay, so we're going to go remove below. So we're going to chop the solids below the surface. For dig, it's usually the other way around. You'd have it set to remove above. So we're going to hit next. It's doing some preparation of a few things, and now it's doing the actual cutting of the solids. And then when we get to the end of that, it's then going to run through the saving of those solids. And then what I'm going to fire off is one more thing, which is if you're using the relimiter, I would recommend that you're also running a solid simplification. If you're not sure how to do solid simplification, look at the last video. But what I want to do is relimit to simplify the new relimited solids. These you're not going to use for their volume, so you can overwrite them, leave everything set to the default, run the simplification on the relimited solids. You'll see in a moment the result of this. This is actually simplifying not just the outer pit, I just realized, but it's reasonably quick. So you'll see here, I've got a reduction of 90, like I've removed 90% of the triangles. So the relimited solids are purely for, for an animation purpose. If they're not perfect, it doesn't matter. If you're going to recut your solids, you're going to recut your imported solids. So these solids are like an animation solid only. So we're going to set that. It's now set to, as I said, we've knocked out 90% of the triangles. So we've done the actual scan, but we haven't changed the way our case works. We haven't changed it to use a relimited solid field. So that's the final part of the process. If you'd already set this up, you'd be done. You've run the relimiter, you just hit reload solids. But if we hit reload solids at the moment, nothing's going to change. That's because we haven't touched the settings of our case yet. So we need to do two things. We need to change the animation solid for our dumps to the new relimited solid field. And we also need to change what volume system that we use. So this is using the deswirled volume for the purposes of the demo. You would need to switch the volume that you're using as well. The way that this tool works is if you're relying on these volumes, then you're going to end up wanting to set your initial state back to 0%. So you don't want to cut the solid, give yourself a new volume, and then also remove some of that volume again through the initial state. Normally, if you're using the relimiter for a dump, you're right to go with just the new volume in the table. So leave them alone, but possibly you need to go to your initial state for your dump as well and clear it out and set it to 0%. But then come back to the animation. This is what we're waiting for. We hit reload, and what will happen is the new solids are only going to be above the surface because all those solids in this bench are below. And if we clean the range, you can see all of the solids now are effectively cut to that surface. So we've got new volumes, new solids, you're ready to go. The only other thing I'll show you quickly was with which volume you want to use. So your other option was you can use that volume, but if your solids have some strange or non-standard way of getting the volume, then you may need to use your original volume, in which case you might want to go with your original volume. Change that to a get value, that might help. And then we'll multiply that by the percentage remaining. So if we multiply that by the percentage remaining, so if it's not touched, it'll be 100%. If it's completely removed, this number will be 0. So if there's 0 remaining, we'll get 0 volume, which means we won't see a solid on the screen. That's the other way you can choose to do it as well. So you can either rely on the volume that we give you, or you can rely on your original volume and just use a percentage removed. So that's the summary of how you could add relimited solids to your dump schedule. If you're unclear about any of that, or if you've got any questions about it, it's obviously a little bit trickier for dig, where you choose to assign the new volumes. Do you do it in situ? Do you do it after ROM or scheduling allocations? Do you take into account that have you got a prime surface, or are you using an ASCON? There's a variety of things you have to consider. It's a little bit trickier with dig. You can still get it to work, and it still works well, but you need to be a little bit more considerate about how it works. Try it on your dumps first, And if you can get it working on your dump schedule, then we take it from there. So if you have any questions, support@precisionmining.com, give us a call. New numbers, the new phone number, which I was about to read out the old one. New phone number is 073539 0000. So anyway, have a good weekend. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.